Hey, it's Michael Sapersky here, and what you're about to listen to is a past interview that I think you'll enjoy.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast with your host, Michael Sapersky, where we take you deep into the world of elite consultants.
Anthony Iannarino, entrepreneur, author, and consultant. Anthony is the president and chief sales officer of Solution Staffing, director of B2B Sales Coach, and a daily writer at thesalesblog.com. Anthony has an amazing story. I'm excited to have him here with us today. Anthony, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Michael.
All right, so Anthony, you're a sales guy, one of the top around, and you know your industry very well, but many people feel sales and selling are dirty words. Why is this?
It's a good question, and there's some reason that sales has developed a bit of a reputation over the last, let's say, couple thousand years, right? For a long time, there was an imbalance of power where sellers had more information about their product, about the market, about what it was worth than buyers. And so we were taught things like tie downs to say, Michael, you do love your family, right? You do want them to be safe, don't you? You do want your kids to go to college. Well, then, how can you go to sleep at night not having signed this insurance contract? And there were all those kinds of tactics being used. And people got tired of it, and the balance of power shifted over time. More people entered the market. But I think that the point of your question for your audience is a lot of people feel that selling is about being manipulative or persuasive or making somebody buy something that they're not going to benefit from for the seller's benefit alone. And that hasn't been true for a long time, and it's certainly not true of consultants. And a little bit of my story, which I've shared with you in the past, I would have never gotten into sales if it was about taking advantage of other people. But it's really about creating value for other people. It's about finding a way to be beneficial and helping them get a result that they can't get without you. And that's what makes selling what it is today. It makes you valuable, and you're a value creator. You make a contribution, and you help other people grow.
And so are you saying that tie downs and tactics like that many people will have likely read in older sales books or just even some maybe newer materials as well, are they no longer applicable?
Would you want me to answer that question Tuesday at 2 or Wednesday at 10? Would that be better for you?
Right. Exactly.
And that's the kind of stuff that as a buyer we hear and we're like, really? Why don't you just be honest and ask me what you want to ask me? And that's so much more effective now to just ask for what you want and to be honest and vulnerable and tell the truth. It sells and it works better than a tie down.
It's interesting though, because even I've seen a lot of salespeople, quote unquote kind of sales gurus, whether it's on YouTube or in books, that still use that type of language. And so you're calling, tie downs. I'm sure there's a lot of other terminology that the people will have heard and that you could mention, but it seems that people are still talking about these types of tactics as they kind of do work. But you're saying that they're not as effective, or is it just more that you're not as comfortable with them? I mean, is there kind of a right and wrong when it comes to this?
Honestly, I think it doesn't matter whether I'm comfortable, buyers aren't. And I will tell you, as you move up from a low dollar, low risk transactional sale to a high value, high dollar, high risk sale, those tactics will destroy your ability to sell. So the more that what you do is important to the person's buying, the more that they've got something at risk, the more money they're spending. You completely destroy your trust going to tactics. And really, this is the most important thing. You have to be somebody who creates value. It's more important that you be rather than learn tactics. You need to be somebody worth doing business with. There's no greater value proposition than a salesperson, or in our case, for your audience, a consultant that has the ability to deliver value.
Definitely. And I think that's an important message that a lot of people take comfort in, hearing, because a lot of people have been kind of, raised to feel that as consultants, as business owners, you need to sell with the old tactics, and that's what sales is all about. And what you're saying is kind of a breath of fresh air, because you're saying that's really not the case, and that it's even, going to do more harm than good. And so people should really be who they are and really just focus, instead of focusing on, these old sales tactics, focus more on providing value, which I think people will again take comfort in. So that's great. Anthony, let me ask you, you run several businesses now. One's a staffing firm. I know you speak, you're writing, you're still a consultant on sales. And some people might wonder when they look at all the different things that you're involved in, why is this guy doing so much? Why is he spreading himself thin? Why not just focus on one business and and just take it to the moon? What would you say to them?
Well, I've got a business that's close to the moon, and it's and actually I've got a couple businesses that are close to the moon. I was actually looking at my speaking calendar, and I probably will have 26 speeches, keynotes this year, which is not too shabby for third or fourth year into the business. But I'm on a mission. So I believe that I have a mission. I believe that I am here to serve and to help other people achieve better results than they could without my help. And so I know some things and I know how to help some people. And I think that my mission is to hand people the key that they're already holding, to unlock the chains that they've locked themselves up in, and help them realize their potential. And I do that. So it looks like I have a lot of different jobs, but it's really one mission. And wherever I go, I'm still working on that same mission. So it all looks like one thing to me. And I bring myself to that, whatever engagement it is. I'm bringing Anthony. That's what I do. I bring that to the engagement.
Right. And I guess if we provide people with a little bit more kind of perspective or background on your businesses, when you're saying that you do have a couple of, companies and businesses, that you own, or are involved in, and that they're close to the moon. I mean, we're talking about, I don't know, what you're comfortable sharing, but businesses that are generating significant revenue.
Yeah, you can say 45 million, and that's the top 0.5% of all businesses in America.
Right.
To get to that level. So it's significant. And there's still room to grow there.
Definitely. Okay, good. I want to go back in time a little bit and ask you about how you got into sales. How did this even happen? How did Anthony Iannarino end up being a sales guy?
That's a great question, because it's something, as a young child of 5 and 6, while other kids were playing cops and robbers, I was playing sales rep, right? No kid ever goes to his parents and says, when I grow up, I want to be a salesperson. And if they did, the parents would say, what, are you out of your mind? We want you to be a doctor or something. But I had sort of an interesting upbringing. My dad left when I was 7. My mom raised 4 kids by herself, and I grew up in an apartment complex. And I really had no adult male role model that gave me a vision of what I could become. And so I did the thing that looked most natural for my temperament, my disposition. So I started fronting a rock band when I was 17, as soon as I graduated from high school. And we played every club in Ohio, and predominantly the Columbus area where I lived, until we could really fill any club that we played in. And so from that point, I decided to take a run at it, and I moved to Los Angeles. And I knew the staffing business because it was the family business. So I got into a staffing firm called Olston, which was about a $4 billion concern at that time, and one of the 3 largest staffing firms in the world. And I got a job working a light industrial desk, placing people, because it was the only job they'd let a guy with a ponytail down to his waist do, because they figured I couldn't do any harm over there.
Right.
So I got a new manager at some point, and he came over to the desk and he said, what do salespeople do? And I said, they go out and they talk to customers, they ask, they win their business, and that's what they do. And he said, no, what do our salespeople do? And they got the point of his question, that he was saying, hey, our salespeople aren't winning deals. And I wasn't going to rat anybody out. I didn't really know what they were doing. They were out of the office all the time. So I just hedged and said nothing. But he came back a little while later with a list of clients, and he pushed it across the desk, and he said, whose clients are these? And I said, those are my clients. And he said, how did you, with every negative implication you can imagine in you, because he's looking at somebody who doesn't look like he should have clients, he said, how did you win these clients? And I said, I don't know. I just pick up the phone, I call, I try to help people. Some people let me come out and talk to them, and some of those people ask me to help them. And he said, okay. And he came back later that week and said, I want you to cut your hair off, and I want you to go into outside sales. And what I heard come out of his mouth is, I want you to be a psychopathic axe murderer. Because that was my interpretation of what salespeople were. They were manipulative, persuasive, dirty, and it wasn't any kind of vision I could attach to myself. So I resisted and said, look, I'm really good at what I do. These are my clients. I love them. They love me. I can't do this. You can't make me. And he eventually told me, look, you work for me, and you need to do the job I need you to do. And if you don't come back in on Monday with your hair cut, not all the way off, shoulder length will be okay. We did live in LA anyway. He said, I'll fire you. So, I cut my hair and I went into outside sales, and literally the first account I won was a $10 million account. He helped me drag it across the line. But after I won a $10 million account, I was literally everybody's golden boy on the West Coast, because it was the largest account won on that half of the United States. And I fell in love with it because I realized it was me being able to be resourceful, be creative, take initiative, and find a way to help people who needed my help.
But Anthony, how did you get good at sales? I mean, how did you get this $10 million deal? I mean, was it the people that you knew? Were you in some old boys club, or, were there some secret rock band connections that gave you lots of referrals?
It was the worst possible way to you can imagine. It was picking up the phone and just cold calling. And I literally at that time was really, really dumb and naive as a salesperson. I'm fortunate to have won that, because there's every reason in the world they should not have given me the business, starting with me pushing past the receptionist to the point where she was extremely upset when she passed the phone to her boss. And I'll still remember him getting on the phone and saying, "Why is my assistant crying?" Oh. And I said, I don't know. And I did know, because I bullied her to get that opportunity. And I would never teach anybody to do that now, but I had read a book, actually written by another guy from Columbus, Ohio, and I was very, very tactical. It ended up undoing more deals than it did, and I was fortunate enough to have gotten a pass on that one. But I learned the lessons other places, that how you treat people matters, regardless of what their title is. You asked a good question. How did I learn? This thing about selling is you can read a lot of books, but until you're out doing it, it doesn't work. It's the same as swimming. You can read a book about swimming, but if you get into deep water, you're going to drown. So you go out and you bump into things and you make mistakes and you learn. And then literally after that, I read every book on sales that I could get my hands on, and I started to put a lot of it into practice. And particularly, there were 3 books that had a huge impact, all by Neil Rackham. It started with spin selling. Right. Which taught me that you need to get some commitment at the end of every sales interaction. And it needs to be around, how do I help this person with the real implications of what they're facing? And then as I grew, I became a sales manager, and there was a book he wrote called Managing Major Sales, which is the strategy for winning big deals. And that book was, deeply, deeply important to me in how I developed. And then he wrote a book about managing salespeople that manage major accounts, called Major Account Sales Strategy, with a guy named Dick Ruff. And those 3 books sort of became, this is how I'm going to play the game, and it's worked tremendously. It still works tremendously for me.
Right. And so, I can understand you've been now in the game for a while. You've really fine-tuned and honed, your craft. But in those early days, looking back to when you had just cut your hair to shoulder length, you're in LA, they kind of try to push you to the side of the office, but somehow you still, were able to get a few clients. And then you went out and you got this, you made a secretary cry, and you landed this large deal, but, one of the largest deals around. Was that luck, do you think, or did you at that point even realize and know enough about sales to, to say that what you did was strategic and that, it was well planned? No,
there was nothing strategic. It was completely brute force. If I had any skill early on as a salesperson that helped me, it was just purely self-discipline. I could dial the phone more than you could. I could stay on the phone longer. I would call more people. Even if I wasn't good at it, I could stay on the phone, and I dialed the phone. For the first couple years I worked in sales, I dialed the phone like a madman. It was just brute force. I would dial and dial and dial until I got some connection. And there was really no strategy at that time. I will tell you, and it still makes a difference for salespeople, there's always somebody who wants salespeople to take more action and have more activity. And effectiveness matters a lot. But there is something to be said for activity, and activity does cure low activity every time. And I had very high activity. And when you have very high activity, you do get lucky. And winning the 10 million, I had somebody coach me and help me through that opportunity and eventually had to help me close it. But you don't get in front of them if you don't pick up the phone and make the call.
You told me that consultants don't think enough about sales, but it's obviously a critical, part of becoming successful. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts as to the biggest challenges that consultants face when it comes to sales?
I look at a problem with sales through three sort of lenses. The first lens is mindset. The second is skill set. And the third is toolkit. But for consultants, they're really smart people. They're good thinkers. They have a great ability to create value. The problem is mindset. And so they don't think of themselves as salespeople. In fact, I was with a group of consultants yesterday and I said to one of them, "You are the most pure salesperson in this room." And he said, "Oh my gosh, why would you say that to me?" And I meant it as a compliment. And in his mind, he took it where we started this conversation as something negative. But you can't put on that mantle a salesperson. And I think I've shared a story with you. I spoke at the Ohio Growth Summit a couple months ago, and it's a room of small business people, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And I said, "Raise your hand if you're in commission-only sales." And not a single hand goes up. And I said, "Now raise your hand if your ability to sustain your business, to create value for other people, to grow your business, to do the thing that you set out to do when you started on this path and you got this dream, if anything that comes into your life financially or otherwise is through your ability to persuade other people, to create value with them, to collaborate, and to do something that looks like sales," and every hand goes up. And they start to realize, wait a second, I only make money if I sell. And the crime for most consultants, and I know a lot of them, and I know a lot of people who look at what I've done and said, "I want to do what you're doing." And they have every ability to create value for people. But I say, "What's your client acquisition plan?" And they say, "I'm going to start a website." And I say, "Yeah," you laughed right out of the gate. You were like, "Yeah, good luck with that," right? Because the website's great and there's, the internet's littered. It's a graveyard of people that hung their shingle up on the web thinking that if I build it, they will come. It takes a lot more than that. But once you put on the mantle, I am a salesperson, because salesperson means that I find a way to open up opportunities to create value for other people. And by creating value for other people, I'm allowed to capture some of it. And that's all we're really doing. Once you put that mantle on, it's easy to take the sales actions that you need to take. And once you accept that that's part of your role and part of what you have to do, it gets a lot easier.
It's that mindset that you're talking about and the shift that people need to make it just sounds so critical. I mean, it's almost like the word sales, has a bad stigma attached to it. And if we could change it to, value delivery or something that people would, it's the same kind of result that you're delivering, but a different word. Not that we need to, but if it's almost if we could, it might open so many more people's eyes to the idea that they need to actually engage in this, and they shouldn't be scared of it. And then it's not a bad thing; it's a necessary thing, and it can be a beautiful thing because you're providing value, and in return you get some of that value.
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early-stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early-stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
I mean, I liken it to you're walking down the beach, okay? And there's somebody drowning. And you walk by and say, God, if they'd only yell for my help, I would go help them.
Right.
And you go, hey, man, I'm just going to wait and look at them for a while and see. Well, they're not asking for my help. I guess I'll keep walking on. And you're going to know they're drowning out there. You know, and if you've got to just get into the water and go try to help them because they're going to die without you. And that's the truth for many of us. We have the ability to help. People need our help, but they're not going to find you. You have to raise your hand. This is why so many people in our space love social media, because it's the ability to put something out there and be able to get people to raise their hand. But the people that are failing at it, once somebody does raise their hand, they don't think about what that sales process needs to look like and what they need to ask for and the commitments they need to gain to move those sales along. And if they did think of it through that pure sales lens, they would immediately improve the result.
So you mentioned client acquisition. We're talking about kind of that process right now. So let's get into today's action bite. And you're going to share your early morning routine, which, I mean, really allows you to kind of crush it in your space when it comes to marketing and building your business. And you told me also a story of one lady that called, or maybe she emailed you to report, kind of her success with this strategy. So it would be great if you could share it for all of our listeners.
Yes. So my routine was almost destroyed for tomorrow when I just got home and realized we're out of coffee. But our neighbors, we took their mail in for them while they were gone, and they left us a little coffee mug with some Jamaican coffee in it. I'm not sure if it's going to be up to my standards, but it's all we've got. So it's necessary. The routine starts for me at 5, and my alarm clock goes off at 5 every day, and I have the coffee pot set to go off at 5 also. And so I get up and I spend literally the first hour and a half to 2 hours a day on marketing and following up on sales activity. And for me, it starts with writing the blog post for thesalesblog.com, because that's where all of my activity, that's my main hub. And this again is, you've learned this about me. I'm a brute force guy. So I've posted a blog, entry there every day since December 28th of 2009, with the exception of 10 days I was in Tibet in 2010. And I just thought it would be poor form, to be at Mount Everest, writing blog posts instead of taking that in. So
that's understandable. Yeah.
So I've been writing and writing and writing, and I've been sharing ideas and sharing ideas. But I put marketing first. So it's coffee and then it's writing. And what I've discovered about the writing process, and I had always heard that writers write really early in the morning. And I've come to discover, one, when you wake up, your mind is clean. The world hasn't started making demands of you yet. So you've still got all your psychic RAM. You've still got your best thinking because your brain is working. At least that's the case for many of us. I have some friends who say 11 o'clock at night's the best time for them. And maybe their brain is in its peak form at that time. But there's no interruptions. On the way to get coffee, I step over my dogs. They don't even wake up. They want nothing to do with me that early in the morning. Kids don't, wife doesn't, businesses don't. So you can get a lot of work done in a relatively short period of time. That hour and a half is like 3 or 4 hours any other time of the day. And then from there, I can get into other things. But I've gotten the client acquisition piece, the main thing that I'm doing to generate traffic to the site, to generate value for people who read, is by putting the blog post out there, creating connections, building my mailing list, which grows every single day. And I just get inquiry after inquiry. I mean, I told you, I think maybe we connected over the fact that you sent me a note saying the link to your B2Bsalescoach.com site is down. And it is down because I had to take it down because I can't take any more business, which is a great problem to have. And it gives you a sense of how effective this kind of a strategy can be. So on to the story that you asked me to tell. At the Ohio Growth Summit, a woman came up to me afterwards and said, I don't get up early in the morning. I don't have a strategy for writing posts, and I'm in this content marketing space, and I'm a copywriter. You get up at 5 every day? And I said, yes. And she said, okay, I'll do that. And she said, but I'm not going to write a blog post 7 days a week. I'll only write one 5 days a week. Do you think that will help me? And I said, well, how many are you writing now? And she said, really none. And I said, yeah, it'll help you. There's no question that it will help you. And so maybe 6 weeks had gone by, and I got an email saying, I've been getting up at 5. Some days a little later, some days 4:30. And so far I've landed 2 new accounts, and I've got 2 more prospects in the pipeline that I'm certain I'm going to win. And this has totally transformed my business. And thank you so much. This has changed my life. And I think that it can have that kind of result for people. If you go out and you put marketing and sales first, you tend to grow your clients and you tend to do really well. And if you pretend that there's going to be time later and you try to take care of everything else but that sales and marketing piece, eventually you run out of runway.
You know, I think, Anthony, if I don't dig a little bit deeper here, all of my listeners are going to email me and complain. So you're putting up, you know, I understand, you know, you're writing daily, you're putting up an article on your blog, but what else are you doing? What other considerations? I mean, can someone just go and write on their topic and expect that they're going to get inquiries and land clients? Or what other pieces are going on there? What else are you doing? How are you approaching actually, you know, writing the blog pieces there? Are you thinking about keywords?
No.
What else is happening that's allowing this to work?
I think about what do I need to write to actually help someone with the challenge that they're having right now. So I'm thinking about the people that want to hire me. What are they faced with? And I'm writing the answers. And I tell this story to people. I had one old consultant call me and rip my face off because he didn't like the fact that I'm giving my intellectual property away. And he said, "You're a dummy. You're supposed to save your intellectual property, and you're giving it all away. Anybody can just print your blog post if they want to, and you're dumb enough to put an archive link up there where they can go back through the last 4 years of what you've done." And I let him rip me for a little while, and then as the conversation went on, he said, "And by the way, how are you getting all these clients?" And in his view, I'm giving my content away, and it's costing me something. But in my view, he's smarter than I am. He's been consulting longer than I am. He probably has a greater ability to help some groups of people than I do, but no one knows it. He's a secret agent. So I tend to think of things through the lens of what's the buyer looking for. And the buyer is either dissatisfied or they should be dissatisfied. So I write things to help people see the gap between where they are and where they might be. And then buyers are also looking to recognize their needs. So I write things that help them understand what they might need if they're faced with a certain problem. And then they try to evaluate their options. Well, one thing they do when they evaluate their options is decide, who do I think can help me? And when you've had a chance to be in somebody's inbox for, you know, hundreds of days, if they've gotten your newsletter every week for a couple years, you know, you're the person that they start to look to for those answers. And I've gotten the permission to come into their inbox and to have conversations and share with them. So it's a natural fit.
So for someone that's listening to this and saying, okay, you know, this is great, I'd like to, you know, get the same kinds of results. If they get started, how quickly do you think that they're going to be able to, you know, to see some sort of traction? I mean, when you started your blog, what kind of timeline were you looking at before you started to see some results from it?
When I started posting daily, I bought the blog in 2007 and I really did nothing with it. And then as 2009 started to creep along, I was reading Seth Godin every day and watching what he was doing. I was watching Chris Brogan, who's now a good friend of mine, and Chris was writing a lot about how to use the social web to connect with customers. And then he wrote the book Trust Agents, and I read Trust Agents, and honestly, I didn't get it the first reading. It took me a couple readings to get what he was saying. When I read it the first time, I kind of intellectualized it, but the second time I was like, oh, this is a recipe book. You're just supposed to follow the recipes. And I went, okay, now I get it. So I started following the recipe. And in that December, I went and I told my wife, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and I've got this thing to share, and I'm going to start writing a blog post every day. And within a year, I'll be keynote sales conferences, you know, for $10,000 a speech. And she said, I really don't understand any of what you just said, but it sounds like a really good plan to me. And I got up and I started writing, and I got my first speaking gig from the blog, October of that year. It took 10 months of writing every day. But I did more than that. So I connected with a community like you're doing here. I built connections. I shared everything from everybody else in my space. I have a tribe right now of about 35 to 40 people in the sales world. They're consultants. and trainers, and I share all their stuff. I share all my competitors' stuff, and they share mine. And I built that presence over time, but it really took about 10 months before I got the traction. And if you're going to approach this, it does take time. But I will tell you, good content it will definitely make a difference. And the frequency, it doesn't have to be every day, but there needs to be some regular frequency where people can feel this connection to you that they don't if you just blog sporadically.
Right. So what you're saying is frequency, valuable posts, educational articles for your ideal clients, the people that you want to connect with, and then you also engage and connected with other, people in your industry, even if they're competitors, which might seem counterintuitive to some people, but it is obviously working for you. And then, anything else along those lines? Were you doing any other kind of social media that helped you? Any kind of advertising? Anything, search engine optimization?
I don't ever think about search engine optimization, and I use Synthesis from Copyblogger. And I have no idea what the score means or what I'm supposed to change. And some scores, it's almost like a game for me. I can get like, hey, I got 2 100s. I have no idea how I did that. And then other days I get 35 and 42, and I hit the publish button anyway. So it doesn't mean anything to me. I don't think that that's what matters. I think that you make a connection with people, and that's what really, really connects. I did use AdWords when I started the coaching and consulting thing early on, and I had success with AdWords without having any kind of blog. I don't know what it would do if I had what I have now with AdWords, but I don't feel like I need it from this point because I'm at the point where I'm turning business away.
Right. And so when people then, they read your articles and they contact you, do you have a specific process that you're using to kind of turn them from people that are just inquiring into actual business that, that people could benefit from?
Yeah, mostly it starts with me trying to understand their challenges, their problem sets, and their goals, because there are a lot of people who I can't help. And I don't want to spend time with people I can't help, although some of them would like me to spend time with them because they read me and think, well, you're the guy to help me. But sometimes I'm not. Sometimes they need somebody with a different background than mine to help them. I'm not a B2C guy. I'm a B2B guy, and if they're B2C, I'm not the right guy. Some of them are in commission-only gigs, which I'm opposed to when it's a young person and they're just being taken advantage of, and it's tough for me to help them because really what they need is a good coach, a good teacher, a good sales manager. So I really start with disqualifying. And at some point, when your business gets big enough, you start with money as a disqualifier because you have to raise your rate when you run out of hours. And so you keep raising your rate, and that knocks some people out of your pipeline right out of the gate.
And how much time would you typically invest when someone inquires and they're interested in working with you, or they send you an email and say, hey, I'd like to get some help, coaching and some support through my B2B sales process and for my my organization. How much time would you typically spend with that person? What kind of interactions would you have before you actually, start charging them? I
will have a full hour discussion just to figure out where they are and how I can help them. And it may not be through coaching or consulting. It may be me giving them some different advice or telling them to go to somebody else who's better suited for their problem. But I'll spend an hour with them if I can.
And do you do a certain level, are you doing qualification before you spend that hour with them, to find out, do you have any kind of assessment or?
No.
No? So someone could just send you, an email and say, hey, I'm interested in getting help, and you'll get on the phone with them for potentially an hour, or you?
Yes. Yeah, it normally takes me some time, and I somebody who's not a client right now may be a client later on, and maybe me giving them the help that I can give them and pointing them in the right direction. Later on they say, hey, he's a good guy. We should think about him for something else. Who knows? Try to be nice to everybody.
So Anthony, finally, you're writing daily, and for people that don't consider themselves writers, any recommendations for them as to what they can do to become better at writing?
Read Stephen King on writing. Writing well, Zinsser, read those things. I think again, it's like swimming. We're back to that, is that the more you do it, the better you get.
Right.
And if you want to make the best mistake you can make, I can share my favorite one that I did early on, and I still have the blog post to prove it. I typed right into WordPress. And if you want grammatical errors and spelling errors that you can't see that are invisible to you and horribly embarrassing, write directly into WordPress instead of something with a really good grammar and spell checker.
But that didn't hold you back, obviously.
No, it didn't. But at some point I went, you know what, I've got to do something different, and I switched to Word, where I had a reasonable shot of picking that stuff up. I'm still not the best editor in the world. Well,
but I mean, that goes to show that you don't have to be a perfectionist. You don't have to, be perfect every time. You can still achieve a lot just by giving it a really good effort.
More action. More action. That helps.
Well, Anthony, again, thanks so much. I appreciate your time and you sharing with all of our listeners. Thanks so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Are you ready to take your consulting business to the next level? Learn more about the Accelerator Coaching Program at consultingsuccess.com.